Today on Secret Heart Broadcasting, what to do when your boss axes you, or let's talk about getting fired, among other things. My guest today is Jennifer Allford, nationally recognized travel writer, columnist, team leader, avid reader, former reporter, lover of dogs, mother of two very lovely adults, and despite her ability to meet deadlines, deliver the goods, craft an excellent sentence, and often make readers laugh, she, like me, is a member of the Sacked Sisterhood. We were both fired. I have to admire and have always admired Jennifer's ability to tell it like it is. She is, and I say this with tenderness, not a person who suffers fools. Is that fair? And I've always admired that about you. You've always been able to speak your mind freely. You have this opinion. You're unapologetic. And let's start there. Where did you learn to say what you mean?
Oh, I've never thought about that. I think I was just always encouraged as kids. I was raised by a really strong mom, and a good dad, although they were divorced. And, you were expected to kind of share your opinion. I think there were no quiet people in my house, and you had to really speak up, just like you had to eat fast with your elbows up. So yeah, I think that's just where it came from, just around the house.
And was that ever a liability in your career?
Oh, probably. My mom used to say that, how did she say it? She would say a strong, smart, attractive woman scares the pants off half the men in the room before she even opens her mouth. And I remember when she would say that, and she died when I was really young. I was only 22, so I kind of wish I could go back and get more pearls of wisdom. But I remember that one, and I remember thinking what are you talking about? But as with many, many other things she used to say, later on I was like, oh, I get it now. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I once had a boss say to me, Kerrie, nobody likes a mouthy woman.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And who knows, maybe that's true. I never really thought about myself as mouthy.
Well, and same thing. It's just like you just are yourself and you speak your mind just like everyone else speaks their mind. I didn't actually understand sexism in the workplace until I was, mid-30s. There was nothing that would lead me to believe that my opinion wasn't as equal value of anyone else's opinion. So I never stopped to check myself. Mm-hmm. Why the hell should you check yourself, Kerrie?
Yeah, well, I know. And I would say the same thing. Growing up, I just thought, and I came of age at this, woman hear me roar. And my mom was a working mom who, was more or less a single mom. It didn't occur to me that there wasn't automatic. I mean, it's naive now, right? It's like there is equality. And it didn't even occur to me until I sort of thought, hey, maybe there isn't.
Yeah, we take all that stuff for granted. That's why I can't stand when you hear women say, especially young women, go, well, I'm not a feminist, but blah, 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 blah. It's like, no. Respect your elders. Mm-hmm. You did not get all these rights just because someone one day said, well, I know, let's give the gals and let's give the bullshit. Yeah. Like people had to fight really hard for centuries to get to where we are in this position where we are as women in Canada, which is the best place in the world to be a woman as far as I'm concerned. And so when young women say, oh, I'm not a feminist, but I expect this, and this, I kind of want to.
Yeah.
Well, I usually do say something.
Way in a much earlier career, when I was doing celebrity interviews for a movie review program, Frances McDormand said to me after I said to her, I want to ask you, and I'm not a feminist, and she just tore a strip off me, as she should have. At the time I was, shaking and like, oh, what have I done? But it was like I was buying into programming to be apologetic about being a feminist, like there was something bad about this, when in fact, as you say, we stand on the shoulders of giants.
Mm-hmm. And my daughter, one of my best favorite wonderful Mother's Day presents I ever got was from my daughter, and she just got me a t-shirt that says feminist.
Yay, Jean.
Yay, Jean.
I do want to talk, well, let's go back to being fired, and then let's also talk about being a mom and having a strong mom. But fairly early into our friendship, we both had this kind of realizations like, oh, you got fired, I got fired.
All the best people have been fired.
All the best people have been fired. And ages ago, Linda Ellerby wrote a book on that. But for me, for years, I was so ashamed. And for me, I got fired from my high-profile movie review show. And at the time, in the city I worked in, I was page one of the entertainment section. Penny fired from a movie review show. And, it took me by surprise. I obviously didn't feel like I should have been fired. I think even in the moment of being fired, I started crying and couldn't speak, was trying to just swallow that lump in my throat. I went home. I didn't tell anybody until the next day when like the whole city knew.
Oh boy.
And I actually just had I think I was 27 or 28, what astrologers would call my Saturn return, where things, come in for a reckoning. I left my relationship, left the city and moved away out of the country for a few years. And it took me a long time to make that not feel terrible in my body. It was only recently, this year, I was going through old journals and the newspaper article kind of fell out. And at first I was like, ah! And then I thought, wait, I actually don't have a feeling about that anymore. I don't care about that anymore. And that feels kind of cool. And it only took 20-ish years. But anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I'm wondering if you want to talk a little bit about how you came to join the club.
Well, I got fired twice.
Oh.
So the first time I got fired, I was working with Mogan Smed, who I've worked with. I just came from there again now. I was working with him again just recently. But this was back in the day. And my boss wasn't Mogan's, but my boss called me downstairs to HR. And I walk in and there's the envelope and I'm like, great. And so they're blah, blah, blah. And I was really mad. In the moment, I was mad. Mm-hmm. And then it was funny, they took away my fob and they walked me out and everything. And the HR lady was crying on the way out, walking me out. And I was like, oh no, actually I'm getting ahead of myself. So they passed me the paper and all that. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And I said to them as I left, I was like, well, thanks and so long and thanks for all the fish. And they didn't get the reference. And I was like, yeah, all right, one for me. So anyway, so I went home and I was very upset. And I called my brother, who's a lawyer, to get a lawyer and all that stuff. And I got home and I bawled my head off. I was really upset, really terrified. I was terrified. I was never going to work again. I was a big fat loser. No one would hire me. I'd lose my house. I would just be like screwed. Mm-hmm. And then at about 3:00, I looked at my watch and I was like, oh. And I went and I washed my face and put on some mascara and some lip gloss. And I went off to my first interview at my next job at the Calgary Herald, which I knew because I could tell that I was going to get fired when I got this new boss who was much shorter than me. I'm kind of tall, and looked up at me and he said, I'm terrified of you. And I thought, uh-oh. And so anyway,
it's like what your mother said.
Yeah, so I just started like putting the word out that I might be looking for a new job, which was, anyway. So then I like I say, I looked at the watch, got cleaned up a little bit and went down to my first job interview at the Herald. And the only thing that got me out the door, because I was in pretty rough shape, was that it would make a great story. That I went for the same day I got fired, like 4 hours later, I got in the car and I went to my first job interview 4 hours after getting fired. And that's what got me out the door. And I got that job.
And it is a good story.
And then I got fired from that job because I got a new boss. And in both cases, it was the same thing. I got a new boss. Mm-hmm. And, you can go from being a rock star with one boss, you have a groove, everything's good. And then you get a new boss and it's really nothing personal. It feels very personal. But it's really nothing personal. And so at the Herald, when I got fired, I got a new boss who at one point told me that I had 3 options. And one of them was I could fix myself and stay, or I could this, or I could go. And I was like, you know what? I'll be going then.
Mm-hmm. I'll be going.
Fix myself.
So that was a question I had too. I know I had, I guess, was it a premonition? Was it so obvious everyone else could read the room but me? But I had about a week where I was like, oh, something's not right.
Yeah.
But don't be paranoid or
no,
you worry too much, but something's not right.
That stuff is real. Like that same thing happened to me the first time I got fired and the second time. The second time I got fired, I was in a course on my boss was very difficult. And I was in a course on how to manage difficult people. And I got an email from him and I was like, oh, he's going to fire me. And I thought it was pretty funny, actually, because I was in this course and apparently I didn't need to finish the course because instead I just got fired. But yeah, that's Spidey sense stuff, like for sure. And in the end, when you do get fired from a job, it is always a blessing. It doesn't feel like it, but it is a blessing because it's about fit. And whether maybe you fit perfectly last week, but if you have this new boss or there's a new situation and you no longer fit, then you really are like, you really should go. Mm-hmm. And I think now if I were in that situation, I would just go. I wouldn't wait to get fired. I would, because I'm older and I sense it, you'd sense it and you just go. But so in my view, getting fired, it doesn't feel like it, but it's always a blessing.
Yeah, I would agree in hindsight with that. And, you know, it comes with, as you alluded to, like if it is your sole job, and for me, for many years, I've been, you know, I'm like the, you know, original gig economy person. I've been freelancing for decades. But it's an income stream. It's revenue. It's like how you pay your rent. It's how you feed yourself. And there is that moment of like, uh-oh. And especially when you're young, you don't have loads of savings. You're living in hand to mouth fill.
And you're a single mom. Like it's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. I remember when I got fired the first time, I love saying that, by the way. When I got fired the first time, I was like in the fetal position on my bed for a couple weeks. You know, I was really scared. And I got a bouquet of flowers one day, and big, huge, beautiful bouquet of flowers, and there was no card. And I was feeling so low and so useless, you know, because obviously I'm useless. If I got fired, I'm dumb, I'm this, I'm that. And I got this insane bouquet of flowers, and they were cut flowers. So every flower, as I put a flower in the vase, I'd think, well, was it my brother? Was it my other brother? Was it Kerrie? Was it this person? Was it this friend? Was it that person? Because I just sort of had to count the people who cared about me, who might have sent these flowers. And I phoned one friend right away because she'd been keeping pretty close tabs on me, and she denied up and down, left and right, that she sent the flowers. She finally fessed up a couple of weeks later that it was her, but it was genius because it forced me to think about the people who cared about me. And when you think about the people who care about you, you can't feel useless. Like it just elevated me. It was a really smart thing to do.
Wow, that is a wonderful story. And a great reminder again of we're never as alone as we feel we are in these moments.
Yeah.
When you were speaking about it's better to be fired than stay, I was thinking about the people I've met in my life who just twist themselves to try and fit, right? I think I've been like that in personal relationships. I have met people like that in the world. I mean, I've been that person. I'm not saying those people, but yeah, just trying to make yourself twist and make yourself fit to make it right.
Well, I had done that the second time for sure. Well, both times, I suppose, but the second time. And when this guy said to me, all right, well, you know, that's not working, and here are your three options, and one of them is you can fix yourself. Ugh. And I thought, no, you can fix yourself. I'm out. Like that was the final straw for me. It was just like, oh, I see what's happening here, and no, I'm not going to put up with it. But it took a while of getting beat up by him, to not literally, but like emotionally sort of abused by this guy for a while. And then when he said that, it was just like the fog lifted. I was like, no, I don't need to fix myself.
Enough.
Yeah. But again, it was a gift. In both times, like, it's a gift when you get fired, and it still hurts and everything. But like the first time I got fired, I was in London drugs a couple days, or maybe it was a couple weeks, I can't remember. But I saw these, not even very cute, but these thank you cards. And I don't know I'm not well schooled in cognitive behavioral therapy. I didn't even know what that was at that time. But I saw these thank you cards, and I thought, I'm going to buy these because one day I'm going to be grateful that they fired me. And I don't know where the idea came from, but there it was. Maybe it was my mom coming down from, or coming up from whatever. It was, I don't know. But so I bought these cards, and they weren't even that cute. But anyway, I bought them, and I put them in front of my computer, and I kept them there every day while I was, sending out resumes or whatever the hell I was doing. I'm going to be grateful. 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 And I had this whole fantasy in my head, like where I was going to bump into the guy who fired me. And I spent, I don't know how many hours just perfecting in my head what it would look like when I bumped into this guy. And I don't remember, I didn't really work on the dialogue so much, but it was like, well, I'm going to wear these boots and I'm going to wear those boots. And like I would change it, but I just spent all this time thinking about what I was wearing as I'm walking down the street, like Mary Tyler Moore or something. And he sees me and he goes, hey, you look great. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And I just keep going or something like that, whatever. But I just spent a lot of time thinking about this little fantasy in my head when that would happen. And then what did happen is, so I'm at the Herald, and I had to be a judge at the Eddies. And remember the Eddies?
Yeah.
The Eddies were so great.
And the Eddies, for those of you who don't know, there's a very famous brewery in town, the Big Rock Brewery, and they used to run Make Your Own Commercial contest, and they ran an Academy Awards for fan-based commercials.
And that was called the Eddies.
Ta-da.
So I had to judge the Eddies in my new role and at the paper. And so I was really nervous about it because I'm not really good on stage like that. But I get up there and I do my little thing with my fellow judge, and I go back down and I sit down, and all the judges were in the front row. So I go back down and I sit down, like this, and I'm like so relieved that my little moment in the spotlight's over. And I get this tap on the shoulder, and I look, and it's the CEO of the company that had fired me. Not my boss, but the boss's boss. And he was like, Jennifer, you look great up there. And I was like, thank you. And then I was like, oh, there it is.
Were you wearing the boots?
I don't remember what I was wearing, but it was just like, I just remember as I turned around, I was like, oh, there it is. Because I would not be judging the Eddies if I had not been fired.
And I think for me, because, I would have been in the velvet coffin because I couldn't have ever quit that job. It was just too good. I mean, they fly you to LA and New York and you interview celebrities and you mostly say great things about the movies, but there's no way I could have left that. So, and who knows the person I would have been if that had been my whole life, just cycling around the
You would have got
fringes.
bored of it.
Yeah. Well, thankfully I never had to find out because I got a good story. I left Canada and went away for a couple of years and had, in my mind, it's like, whatever happened to Kerrie Penney? Da-da.
Spoiler alert, she's doing a podcast.
We at the beginning of this show, you talked a bit about your mom, and I wonder if you want to talk a bit about inherited wisdom. Part of Secret Heart for me was this realization at a certain age that, well, first of all, the idea of Secret Heart for me is intuition, that whisper voice that's like, you should do that. And I think, and I'm just kind of connecting this now, I think, is that also partly my mom's voice? She was a big fan of mine and was not able to do the things that I did in my life. I mean, she had, she made I would say a bad marriage that wasn't very happy. She raised 4 kids more or less as a single mom. She, it was a life of toil, as my friend Liz would say. But yet there was this, she believed I could do things. She believed in me more than I think I believed in me at the time. And I'm kind of, I'm just wondering if you had that feeling about your mom. And your mom died as you mentioned, when you were quite young, so you didn't have the length of time. I mean, my mom died when she was 90, and I was able to help her die. Anyway, I want to talk about moms and inherited wisdom and what your mom taught you.
Yeah, my mom was great. She died at 58, and I was 22. And I often think even just a few years later, because when you're 22 and you know everything, and you just even if it had been a couple more years, I would have been, Mom, I got a couple of questions for you, but that's not how it worked out. So what did I learn from my mom? Well, I think I learned from my mom to be, she was very strong. She was very sensitive and stuff too, but she just, my mom was great at the quip. So she said things like, and these are things that I still repeat today.
And come closer to the mic so you can say them.
So so she was great with the quip. And she would say things like, the sexual revolution just made it easier for men to get laid. Don't be getting all caught up in, just mind yourself there, because the world hasn't, she would say, things are changing, but they have not changed. Stuff like that, she had a lot of those sort of, actually wrote some down because I wanted to.
Momisms.
Momisms, yeah. Oh yeah, the other one that was really good. And she would say, you don't have to tell everything you know. You don't have to tell everything, shut your mouth now and then. And then she also, what was that? Was it Desiderata?
Desiderata.
Is that how you say it? Okay. So she would quote from that, and she would say, the universe will unfold as it should. So those are all just quips that she would say, but those are things that I still remember. Of course, she's been dead a very, very, very long time. But I think over and above that, she loved to laugh, and she got a huge kick out of her kids. And we just ran the joint. Honestly, we were just a bunch of orangutans. We didn't, you'd go down. That's one of my favorite pictures of my mom. She's sitting there and she's knitting a scarf, watching the Oilers. I'm from Edmonton. And she was sitting there and she has this denim skirt on, this long denim skirt with flowers that she embroidered on it. She was a total hippie, my mom, but she was just a little head of the hippie thing. And the place is falling apart. There's a poster hanging by one pin behind her, and there's a vacuum cleaner that's probably been there for a month, and there's dirty dishes, and she's just watching the Oilers, and guaranteed those dirty dishes weren't hers, but it wouldn't even cross our minds to put the vacuum cleaner away or vacuum. So she put up with these 4 asshole kids, and but she always had a great sense of humor about it all. She just laughed a lot, and she would say things like, housework is an insult to my intelligence, which my daughter now actually got embroidered for me for another Mother's Day present. Housework is insult to my intelligence that I have in my kitchen. Although my house is pretty tidy. But.
Yeah. Is there also, I remember a story of your mom having her university degree.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
In the laundry room.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where mine are too. But my degrees are in the laundry room as well. Yeah, she never took herself too seriously. And she, in terms of inherited wisdom, I think just to be strong and to have a support network and to, like family, I have a lot of friends who don't speak to their siblings or whatever for whatever reason or another, and it just breaks my heart every time I hear stories like that. Like, she really instilled in all of us the importance of taking care of each other.
You were one of my go-to moms when my daughter was little, and actually that quote, "You don't have to tell everything you know," I would say to Annabelle, Jen's mom said. So that's a piece of inherited wisdom that's coming down many lines, I think.
But I do think you learn parenting skills through osmosis too. I think you just learn, my mom would pick us up at lunch and take us for picnics. She just had fun with her kids. And she really enjoyed kids, and she, liked to do fun things like that. She wasn't one of those moms who was obviously she wasn't like, well, clean up your room. And it was just like, let's go have fun and enjoy each other. So I think you learn your parenting through osmosis. So the way your parents parented you is how you parent your kids, I think. I mean, you can make improvements and tweaks and that sort of thing, but just in general, that sense of parenting.
I think that's true, because for my mom, she was a wonderful cook. And I mean, we lived on, there isn't an organ meat we didn't eat that she could make taste reasonable. I remember looking into the pressure cooker, because of course she worked, so the pressure cooker would go on when she came home. And I was tall enough to look down into the pressure cooker, and we were having something called tongue. But I didn't know tongue was tongue. But when I saw it in the pressure cooker, I was like, oh my gosh, tongue is
She wasn't
tongue.
joking. It's actually, well, see, I lucked out that way because my mom was like me. She's very squeamish about meat. So we never had tongue. We had a lot of hamburger soup called gilly gilly. And somebody once said, what's gilly gilly? Or somebody asked what gilly gilly was, some other kid, and mom described what was in it. She said, and my friend said, that's like shipwreck with carrots. We're like, okay, whatever. But just basically hamburger soup, right?
Yeah, but that's a poet. She sounds like a poet.
Yeah.
Shipwreck with carrots. That's
and
great.
You just never, ever, ever wasted food. So I still am really bad with that. I just don't like wasting food.
Well, I think we had that in common too as friends, our sort of, I was going to say arbitrary thriftiness, but not necessarily. I mean, we're both plastic bag washers, for example.
Yes, and our parents were both Depression era, right?
Yes.
So you don't waste anything. You keep the string because you might be able to use it.
Or the foil.
And you never, ever buy paper towel. Ever.
I married a man who buys paper towel.
I do buy it now and then, but I always feel sorry, Mom. Every now and then I got to buy paper towel.
I think there was, with my mom, and as I'm thinking about parenting my daughter, my mom was quiet and kind. So she didn't really, it's interesting. She didn't really have a voice. That wasn't part of her. It just didn't work out that way. And yet I'm the mouthy one. I mean, everyone would say that in my family. Oh, she's the mouthy one. But there's also the kindness piece that came down, where I think, and I often felt in the world, kindness was weakness, right? Like if you're kind or compassionate, you should have that edge, and you should, hey, like you said, nothing personal. It's just business, nothing personal. Yeah, I was never built for that kind of business.
No, neither am I.
Yeah.
But it is true in the case of getting fired. It isn't. It feels very, very personal, but I don't think it is in the end. I think it says more about them than you. And and again, I think the thing about getting fired is, you know that down the road, it takes a while. You got to feel the feels. You got to bleed for a while. You got to, feel sorry for yourself and take all the love you can get and that sort of thing. But then you got to brush yourself off and get up and get moving again. And then at that point, you'll realize, looking back, oh yeah, thank God that didn't work out, because now I'm doing this. I wouldn't be doing that if, and I've thought that 100 times since getting fired.
Yeah, I think me too. And I think that's important too, to walk through the feels. Like you can't walk around grief. You can't walk through it, find your way through it.
You got to feel the feels. There's no shortcuts there. And now that means you don't have to tell everything you know about your feels. So you've got to have when it comes to getting fired, I would say that you can say whatever you want to your A-list,
Your
cry
inner
your heart
circle.
out, call them all the names in the book, do all that stuff. But then when you get beyond your A-list to friends that aren't, that super close or acquaintances, and certainly anyone you know professionally, you don't burn any bridges. You just say, oh, it didn't really work out, wasn't the right fit, whatever. Or you just smile, like you cannot slag people. You cannot slag your boss. You cannot slag where you worked. You cannot slag your colleagues. Don't do that, because you just don't know, you just don't want to burn any bridges. And also you don't want to look like a whiny little pissy pants.
Yeah.
Like, everybody gets fired. And I still have this policy to this day. If I hear of someone I know who got fired, I don't even necessarily know them that well. I'll phone them and say, do you want to go for lunch?
Yes.
And I'll give them the pep talk, because you're so hard. But for someone, like, once you've been through it a couple of times, you know that it's going to be fine. And you can also say, like, don't be slagging, because it's just not cool to slag the people who fired you.
And it's not professional. And it's not, I don't know, like, I don't think it's who we really are. Holding a grudge. Is there anything less attractive than people who hold grudges?
It's so funny, because I get reminded of things every now and then, and I'm like, oh yeah, right, that really made me mad. I'd forgotten all about it. Like, thank goodness. Like, that's just, oh.
Are you ever in the shower and you have a feeling come back to you from like 10 years ago, yesterday, whatever, where you're like, oh, if only I had said that. I used to be plagued by, like, kind of, I don't know what you call it.
I know that, like, delayed perfect line.
The perfect line.
Yeah, 6 years late.
Yes.
Oh, damn, I got to phone that guy.
Another thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone has that happen. Yeah. But as long as I will forever be grateful that I got this so long, and thanks for the fish out anyway, the reference to Douglas Adams, because they just looked at me like I was, what? And that made me so happy.
Yeah. You didn't belong anyway.
I didn't belong. If you guys don't know Douglas Adams, I shouldn't be here.
I have to say, just again, as I'm sitting here thinking, this is one of the benefits of getting older, right? Is the I don't know if it's more confidence. I don't know if it's fewer things bother you. You're slower to, I know I'm slower to anger, which is really good for the people who know and love me. Is it true? I like getting older. I'm sort of having this thought here right now. Yeah, I think I do.
I sure do. Like, you have to adjust when you look in the mirror every now and then and go, okay, well, that's what I look like now. And whatever, move on with all the, you have to, my Aunt Barb died last year and she was 92. And I'll often say, well, what would Auntie Barb do? Because she was I always told her, you're my aging hero, Auntie Barb, because she was so practical, good prairie girl, although she lived in Ottawa, but very practical and very sensible and very graceful. And very accepting of things. It's like, okay, well, now it's time to move into this place. Okay, now it's time to, now it's time to do this. And she just was so practical about it all. And I just think, what would Auntie Barb do? And Auntie Barb would not shed one tear for her wrinkles on her face. She'd be like, well, I'm 61 or 73 or 82 or whatever it was. And this is what my face looks like. Very good. Carry on.
And I'm alive and I have good health.
And I'm healthy. Yeah. There's lots of people who would love to bemoan their wrinkles, but they're dead. So
my grandmother used to say this. She used to say, and she was from Ukraine, but if you have your health, you have everything.
Yeah, she was right.
Yeah, and when you're a kid, you're like, oh, I really want a My Little Pony.
My grandmother used to say, if I didn't call her for a couple of weeks, she'd say, oh, I thought you were dead. We used to call them atom bomb hints. Nana's atom bomb hints.
Call your grandmother.
Everybody call your grandma. If you still got one, phone her now.
Are these kind of bits of wisdom that you imparted on your own kids? And I'm thinking specifically, you have of course 2 fabulous kids, a boy and a girl.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Was it trickier raising a girl than a boy?
No, I didn't find it. They were both I remember one time with Jean when she was in high school, and I could tell I was just driving her completely crazy, just babbling at her one morning, and she was flat ironing her hair, and I was like, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, do you want the earth to open up and swallow me up right now? She's like, So I just backed off. But no, I didn't. But they also went back and forth between my house and their dad's house, so they could never get too sick of me, so that might have been a factor. But no, I think that they're really different people, but they're both great kids, and they were both they were really, I liked all their friends, and they were both really funny, and so they were different, but I wouldn't say it was easier raising a boy than a girl.
And I just have my control group of one.
And
again, you were just such a great resource to me when my daughter was young, and Yeah, setting up. I think one of the things you taught me was, I'm going to use the word ritual, but like on special day, Christmas Eve, make it the day you go skating, or, have something to come back to on these special days, an event you do that is like a mother-daughter event, that is something that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that they know, because the reason I felt that way about Christmas is because when I was a kid and my parents were divorced, and so every year would go back and forth. Like one year you'd have Christmas with this grandmother, the next that, and you could never really keep track. So around December you'd be like, what are we doing? What? And it was just always a bit different than the year before. So when my husband and I split up, I was like, well, let's do it so that it's the same every Christmas, so that they know every Christmas looks like this. And we divided it up that way, just because I thought then, when they think back, it'll be like, yeah, this is what you do on Christmas,
Mm-hmm. Well, that was a great piece of, I wouldn't say inherited wisdom, but wisdom that has jumped the friendship gaps. So, yeah. Thank you very much. What kind of things do you hope your kids learn from you? What are important things?
To quit jobs if you don't like them, and to go do something that you do enjoy doing. Like if you don't enjoy what you're doing, don't do it. Life's too short for that, especially now. I think with kids these days, with all the existential dread in the world and climate change and everything, it's just like, go live your life and don't live it for tomorrow. Like go and do, like my son just gave up a very lucrative legal career to go into back into academia. And I couldn't be happier for him, because that wasn't a good fit for him, and now he's doing what he's meant to do, and who knows what'll happen after that. Maybe he'll go back to a legal career, I don't know, but just do what you enjoy doing. And they've both been really good at, my daughter's found a career that she loves, and she's doing really well at it. So that would be my main thing, I think, is life is long. And so don't be afraid to shake it up and do different things, and don't ever feel stuck for too long.
Mm-hmm. Just coming back to this idea of secret heart, and I know your career trajectory, and we've touched on it here, but are there moments that you can identify now in your life when you get that little whisper when it's like, Jennifer, do this, pay attention, Jennifer?
I think it's just honestly, I think it's just inherent now. Like I just think it's not a little whisper. It's a big old billboard. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just, I've learned that the hard way, as have you, to do what is to try. My mom also used to say, to thine own self be true. Mm-hmm. And at the time I was like, what does that even mean? What does thine mean? What are you talking about? I got to go, bye. But to thine own self be true. Like truer words have never been spoken. So that, I think, as you get older, one of the real gifts of being older is that just becomes second nature to you. Mm-hmm. And that's why you don't get so upset about things, and that's why you don't get so angry about things, and other people don't bug you so much, because you're just like, whatever, fill your boots over there, I'm just going to do my thing over here. Mm-hmm. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's good. My mom used to say, bloom where you're planted.
Bloom where you're planted. Oh, that's a good one too.
Mm-hmm. Which might have made me a gardener.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've seen your garden. Yes. Okay.
I also want to talk before you go about books. I've asked, and you're a great reader. We're both writers. We're both great readers. If you had to kind of suggest 2 or 3 titles that you would recommend, what are they? And I see.
I brought on YouTube. Some, because when you asked me, I was like, okay, well, I just got back from a little trip where I read a ton, but I thought, what are some interesting titles that might be of value? So I love everything that Kate Atkinson has ever written in her whole wide world. Mm-hmm. Life. And this one, a friend of mine just gave this to me for Christmas. It's a series of short stories.
Oh, I love short stories.
And it's kind of like, if you've read 9 stories by J.D. Salinger, and they're all kind of intertwined and all that. So I think that's what's going to happen here. I'm only like 2 stories in, but I think we're seeing some recurring themes, and I just love her. I think she's great. So I would recommend anything she's ever written in her whole life. This book is called Avenue of Champions, and it's by a young man named Connor Kerr, or maybe it's Kerr, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. And he's actually a friend of my daughter's. And he won a bunch of awards for this book. So he's a Métis kid, young man, I should stop saying kid. But when you get to be a certain age, anybody under 30 is a kid. Anyway, so he's written this book about the Avenue of Champions, which is an area of Edmonton.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So it's like, for those of us who know Edmonton or are from there, there's a lot of references to Edmonton. It's just a really good story. about the Métis community in Edmonton, and there's some really sad bits and some really uplifting bits and some funny bits. And it was a really good read. I started reading it, and I actually made my book club read it, and our book club is tomorrow night, so I can get back to you on how everybody liked it. But it's great. So Avenue of Champions by Connor Kerr, or Carr, I'm not sure how you pronounce it.
Kerr.
Kerr, yep, great book. And then this one, The Essential Retirement Guide.
Which is, at one point this podcast 10 years ago was going to be called Creative Retirement.
Yeah. Well, this book, a friend of mine who is she's a financial analyst, and she's really good with all that world that is like, she can do Excel spreadsheets and everything, and I can't. Anyway, so this book is just a really good and easy read for those of us who are wanting to retire, thinking about retirement, just some good advice and stuff that I certainly never thought about. So this is just a very practical one.
And I love how the ant is lassoing the grasshopper. I always thought I was a grasshopper.
Never noticed that.
Yes.
I like that it says a contrarian's perspective.
Well.
Yeah. So those are three. And this guy, Frederic Vitesse, he writes, I think he writes in the Globe. I've seen his byline. But anyway, it's a good book.
The Essential Retirement Guide, A Contrarian's Perspective. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming down today to talk about, getting fired and living and wisdom and reading. And is there anything that you want to talk about that we didn't talk about?
No, I think we covered a lot of stuff, and thanks for inviting me. And, when you talk about all this stuff and life and all this thing, I've been reminded, I'm thinking of getting a tattoo. And I think what I might get on for a tattoo is a Ron Hines lyric. Ron Hines is this iconic singer-songwriter from Newfoundland. And his big hit, big hit that even mainlanders know is called Sonny's Dream. And there's a line in Sonny's Dream where it goes, "The waves keep on rolling. They've done that for years." And I think maybe I'll get that as a tattoo, because it just speaks to resilience and don't take yourself too seriously, because it'll be another wave. And it might crash you into the sand, or it might take you on a nice trip.
I think that's a perfect ending. Thank you so much, Jennifer Allford.
Thank you, Kerrie Penney.
Thanks for listening. If you like the show, please tell your friends. You can reach us at secretheartbroadcasting.com or on Instagram at secretheartbroadcasting. And if there's something you need to do in your life, tune into your secret heart. The answer's already there. I'm Kerrie Penney. See you next time.